Call the names. Wake the room. Wake the room. Wake the room! Lou, Rex, Pam Ray, Naomi, Afasiana, Babbler, Monarch Soul, Jojo, Grey Eyes, fill my eyes. Poets assemble. No masks, no manners. Say it plain, or say it broken. Monday night in the garden of enlightenment. Low light lit minds, every line got intent. Clock ticks crooked and the room turns vigilant. Quiet so loud you can hear what the tension meant. Then it slips after midnight, manners get murdered. Nice little masks get cracked by a word or a murmur. Twisted Tuesdays twist truth till it turns on its heel. Clean cut faces go strange when the dark gets real. You can feel that shift, that slick little slip when the grin stays sweet, but the eyes don't sit. Like the room grew ribs, like the walls grew ears, like the hush got hands and it's pulling you near. And the words don't rest, they press. Put a heel on the chest, leave a dent in the breath. Every line like a knock from the back of the brain. Like you came in one shape, you won't leave the same. Late night poets, where the room leans in, where the sharp gets shown and the soft don't dim. Late night poets, hear the whole thing shift from a whispering the ribs to a line that lifts from the darkened edge of doubt to the pull you can't ignore. We don't just read the night, we make it something more. Say it plain, say it broken. Late night poets, Wednesday breaks, parts in the park, sink down the spine, half halo, half hazard, both hands in the light in the yard. A seduction walks soft through the smoke, silk on the tongue with the blade in the joke. Books and bards wakes dust in the depth of the shelves. Old ghosts lean out and start naming themselves in a craft in Sullen. Up the ache gets a voice, pain stands up street and makes silence a choice. Then break on through when the dead book gives way, when the masses sink but the pulse says pray. Echoes in the dark, go hunt the fear, that thing with no name starts ringing in your ear. Say it, say it. Fill my eyes with poetry, don't water it down. Let it bite, let it bloom, let it burn through the crowd. Bad company grins like a bruise, dressed smart, and rhythm and rhyme puts a boot through the heart. Late night poets, where the room leans in, where the sharp gets shown and the soft don't dim. Late night poets, hear the whole thing shift from a whisper in the ribs to a line that lifts from the darkened edge of doubt to the pull you can't ignore. We don't just read the night, we make it something more. Say it plain, say it broken. Late night poets, some come shattered, some come slick. Some speak honey with a blade in it. Some sound velvet, some sound wire. Some walk in low and take the room higher. Some come holy, some come liars. That's the thing! This ain't filler for the dead space, no. There's a pulse with a pen, this is blood with a nickel, this is breath with a backbone, ink with the crown. Live mics, live nerves, truth laid bare in the round. This is the beautiful mess, the bruise and the bloom, the line that cuts clean and makes a little room. Late souls, wide eyes, all nerve in the dark. A room full of hearts beating hard through the dark. Wake the room, wake the room. Late night poets, where the room leans in, where the sharp gets shown and the soft don't dim. slips past polite. We tell the truth. L&P, we love you. Stay frosty.
Hello and welcome to In Our Craft or Sullen Art, the multifaceted world of words inked. Here we will ponder and discuss poetry inspired by literary minds throughout history. I am Pam Ray. With me is my co-host Jojo, aka John. Jojo and I are poets on a website called All Poetry with a group of poets called Late Night Poets. If you find tonight's show is not your cup of tea, please check out our other shows. We have 1 to 2 shows per night on a variety of styles of topics and poetry, something to suit everybody's taste. Also, make sure when you get a chance to check out the poetry anthologies put out by Late Night Poets, because when you purchase those, you not only get amazing poetry, you help support these radio shows. And hello, John. How's it going?
All right, Pam, how are you?
You know, I have to say, all in all, I am doing pretty good. I got out for 2 walks today, which was nice because, the sky was blue, the sun was shining, there was a slight breeze. There was, birds and flowering trees. But of course, being, like all these flowering trees, my allergies kicked in. So, oh my goodness gracious, itchy eyes, sinus headache. But I took medicine. But you know how I don't know if you know how it goes. But
I do.
Yeah. It's like on one hand, it's really just invigorating for the spirit to be able to get out in some nice weather, but kind of takes a toll too. All in all, I have to say it was just a really nice day. Of course, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you and other cool poets, so it's good to see people. I see Phil and I see Monty and I see Yumpy and I did see Q. I thought I saw Q for a little bit. Oh, there he is. Yes. Hello, everyone. It is so good to see you all. Waving back at Quicken. Hello, Quicken.
Who
so
just
good
tried
to
to come
see
in
you.
as Who just tried to come in as Pam K. Ray?
Oh, did I accidentally jump onto the studio with my second?
Oh, do you have 2? Oh.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. What it is I use my phone to run the studio.
Right.
And so I stay there. I don't move from StreamYard when I'm on my phone, but I use my Kindle Fire to do other things like post links. And so the name Pam Ray is me. Well, they're both me, but that's the name. That's what I bring onto the stage. And then Pam K. Ray just usually is supposed to stay, like stay down. But for some reason, I don't know why, because I don't push any buttons, but every once in a while, it pops up onto the stage. So there's 2 of me, and I have to push the other one back down. But I went with the K because Jean had started it. She was putting up Pam Kindle Fire Ray, and I. And I'm like, well, my actual middle name, Kathleen, does start with K. So I'm like, it just kind of made sense to put the K because it stands then for both Kathleen and Kindle Fire. Yeah. But And I see Robbie popped in. So hello, Robbie. It's good to see you. Very cool. Very cool. But it's yeah, always good to see people. And I see Monarch and is listening on YouTube. So hello, Monarch. YouTube is such a great option for listening. And you know, I have to say, I mean, either way works nice, whether you come into the studio or listen on you know, YouTube, both are great options.
Yeah. I was watching the YouTube replay of Monarchs and my show last night, and I saw that, you know, like the links automatically pop into the YouTube. That's pretty nice integration.
Yeah. Well, I won't say it's automatic. Actually, it's either me or Jean putting the links in there.
Oh,
but it's still nice that we have that. And like, we don't have to be, there's an option to do it like in the studio. So I don't have to actually be on YouTube. But yeah, right. I mean, I suppose I could have just kept letting you believe it was magic, you
know. There's kind of a standard software infrastructure for moving things between websites, and I thought maybe Kevin had actually gone in and added the hooks necessary to allow that.
Okay.
You know, but
yeah, I mean, because there really is. I mean, oh my goodness, so much stuff you can do with technology nowadays.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. But yeah, so I mean, we have a great lineup of poetry for tonight. We have a few carryovers from Sylvia Plath from the contest you ran. Then we have, we'll go into poetry inspired by Eleanor Wiley. After Sylvia Plath, I do have a poem by Eleanor Wiley to be read. And then we'll go into the contest entries. And then if needed, I have a couple more Eleanor Wiley poems and to be read. So yeah, I mean, it's looking really, really good tonight. Now, I know the last show we did for In Our Craft of Sullen Art, you had already said quite a bit about the contest, some great information about the contest and Sylvia Plath. I wasn't sure, though, if there was anything else you wanted to add on to that.
No, I think not really. I think we saw a really good sampling of poems last week that covered quite a bit of her craft. Some of them even seemed maybe a little bit engineered, which Plath's poetry always kind of seemed like to me. You know, really quite planned, and, you know, well crafted, of course, but she was an absolute master of pressure, and pressure poetry is my thing, and that's what led me to her. And I think we saw some really good examples last week, and I think we've still got like 5 more this week, and I'm sure we will see some more of those this week.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we didn't do Tenacious Membrane by Moss and Memory last week. So that was definitely a nice definitely.
Yes, that is one of our carryovers for sure.
Yeah, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So all right. Let's go ahead, John, and get the ball rolling.
All right. I will post the first link, and do you want to take the first one?
I can do that.
It is Pens, Books, and Dreams of Mud by Jean Zwetsloot.
All right.
Is that right?
Give me. I just pronounce. I pronounce.
Sorry. Cancel that.
Cancel that. Okay.
what did I grabbed the wrong tab. Well, let's start with that one, and
Since we already have it up.
Yeah.
All right. So we have Pens, Books, and Dreams of Mud Pies by Jean Zetsloot. And it goes like this. Falling bruised, seeing myself yet again as mascot leading games, but never playing, I'd sleep. Left derelict, vices would claim me, my immoral heart a plague I need cured, it seems. Endings leave me to hate dawn and dreams. I yearn to be insomnia incarnate, but at noon I sleep just to get away, cursing married years and alarms and early traffic jams after breakfast on the run as too domestic. I fear I weep, pregnant pen in hand, too often reading afterward words meaning tear what was never whole. Us. You want white picket fences. You want picnic Sundays in June. I want passion with Plath and Rupert and Victoria's Secret on Saturdays. Us. I should labor harder to be barren. This pen will be our ruin. Here, sleep, serpentine river, runs gold, foaming wild, bleeding weird, wet, dry realities away from where I tried to die. Sleep, giving birth to a last day's love, is an enemy so mundane that I should arch and display against rage, and yet I nurse it, swollen breasts not quite virgin to the touch of its lust and forgiveness. But I survive and age, bruised. I don't tell you of nightmares of fish and mud and us in the fall, but at night you read before you sleep, and I watch you jealously. Life indeed is mundane. My noon's rest is now dawdled away. Neither deep wisdom nor dark waters of secret hope rise within me. Do I really need sleep and the dream of one day? Yes, but I rise, and I am insomnia incarnate, or a fish caught on a line, taken home to be put in bell jars. And poem.
Mm. Mm.
And your thoughts, John?
There's a lot to unpack here in this extremely in this fantastic, right? There's this I love the back and forth between the insomnia incarnate and sort of dreaming of one day, which I think sums up sort of the back and forth. But in between is a lot of is it the second 1, 2, 3, fourth stanza? I don't know. In the middle is a fair bit of dissatisfaction with the daily domestic doldrums, I guess. Not to be too alliterative, but there's sort of this back and forth between well, and also where was this? That I fear I weep, pregnant pen in hand, reading afterward words meaning tear what was never whole. That's a incredibly strong line, and it just rips you out, rips you apart. But there, yeah. So there's this domestic dissatisfaction. You want white picket fences. You want picnic Sundays in June. I want passion with Plath and Rupert and Victoria's Secret on Saturdays. So there's some serious dissatisfaction with their domestic life or situation. I think they'd rather be writing, but even the writing doesn't seem to be working. There's a pregnancy. There's some pregnancy in here that was kind of jumping out at me, but I couldn't unpack it as I was reading it. Should I labor harder to be barren? this pen will be our ruin. And then sleep, giving birth to a lasting day's love, is an enemy. That's a great line. So mundane that I should arch and display against rage, and yet I nurse it. So I think maybe she is, kind of trapped at home with a baby, and swollen breast, not quite virgin to the touch of its lust and forgiveness. So I think the domestic dissatisfaction maybe also involves, maybe being left at home to take care of kids when she'd rather be writing or creating or something, but also just really longing for some passion in maybe a marriage or a relationship. But this back and forth around insomnia and sleep is, I think, really nicely done. What did you think, Pam?
Well, I like what you had to say there, John. Great comment. I have to agree that, yeah, there really is a sense of dissatisfaction. It makes me think of someone not only struggling with dissatisfaction, but postpartum depression. It feels like in a voice of a woman who is tired of everybody putting her identity into being a wife and being a mother and the expectations of that. And as you were saying, John, that thought on, that the feeling like, it just so mundane, like the not wanting more out of life, wanting to be able to express herself through writing and express herself through actually being out in the world, being a part of society instead of feeling like it's weighed down. I really like the imagery in and metaphor in part 2 where it says, "Here sleep, serpentine river runs gold, foaming wild, bleeding weird, wet, dry realities away from where I tried to die." She brings forth what I like is I feel like Jean's poem captures the spirit of Sylvia Plath and all the struggles that she expressed in her poetry, but Jean does it in what sounds like her voice. I also like the nod to the Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar in the end line, or a fish caught in a line taken home to be put in bell jars. And also the fish on the line is just such a great metaphor, feeling like you're put on display, feeling like your only purpose is so that, a man can hang you beside him and say, this is my trophy. And then you die. And that's it. This is definitely, to me, a very strong feminist right, which I believe, from what I understand about Sylvia Plath, works really well with her writing. I also really like the stanza, and I think you brought up the stanza, the second or third stanza in part 1, where it starts with, "I fear I weep, pregnant pen in hand." I like that because the idea of, wanting to give birth to those words that will become the poetry that express who you are and what your desires are. So excellent write by Jean Svetslut and very well done.
I didn't the bell jar. That you're right. Nice tip of the hat, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Great.
Absolutely. I have to agree. Yes. All right. Well, what do we got next?
Yep. Next up, I am going to read Mistress Naples by Jim Bellamy. As men flow to sea, then a river in a mind must end flowers. As sin cries for greed, then a river in a mind must send flowers homeward. Oh, Dressy, massive breeders bang inside, a mental power, and breaking babies cry for lies, and scalded kissers kill flower. And we will shape the fats and flowers, and man must suckle strands. Oh, as I hear sea-jammed eyes in tans, then sea-bangled ladies dig for trams, and sea sands dig for men of war. And sliding jellyfish quiver like a claw, and rising crawfish cut downs as scores, cut exothermic wars. Ugh. Eyes glow like fear, blinds flow like tears, and I am fed to red rain. Caressing, collapsing killers thrill for men in pain. Oh, as fiery faces fall, then a sea of war must feed fading eyes where war weeps veins. And lane, I hear grain kissing trains, and trains go anywhere. Oh, icy garlands sleep in gardens, deadly diamond drags deep, green leaves, and me and an ancient ghost, just a haunted television host. And sad motel bells ring like death as ropes, hang dizzy saints, and self falls, and wealth falls, and eyes come home now. Oh, when once an apple tree will die, then endless empires will see eyes, dreaming of vision, and a seizing sullen summer's life imprisons men and lost tribes. Oh, as bad birds shake, then light will teeter inside night's thrill, and I am bled from death's hill, and false towns fall forever. Oh, bad diamonds crack, sad ribbons drape death's laps, and backslides rip inside clapped, flown killers. Oh, end poem.
Great read there, John. And I see that Jim Bellamy wrote to prompt 3, which is "The blood jet is poetry. There is no stopping it." I have to say that he definitely has. Jim Bellamy has a way of writing that's all his own. It feels almost like a flow of consciousness, but not quite, because there's a separation of stanzas, and there seems to be, to me anyways, a consistency in tone that takes it away from the realm of the unconscious flow. But I really like the surreal vibe. He always offers up to me plenty of food for thought. It always feels like, as you're reading one of his poems, you're in his mind with him. Amazing imagery and metaphors, great wordplay. This is a write that in part spoke to me on death that dances around opportunities to seize the spirit of those who roam the world. But I like how it reads like a historical context of all that mankind has been offered up, and all these opportunities that and blessings that they have been offered. Like, it feels almost like the idea of a higher power, God, saying, here's your gifts, and then mankind tears it apart with their wars, well, with words too, words, war, pain, the collapsing of society. I always find it interesting, because I know he's done this in other poems before, when Jim Bellamy has the O, which the O to me feels like the sudden, like, surprise, like it's the unexpected, like I wasn't expecting that. And then the triple S's, which,
Yeah.
I just always, like, seems like a snake, like all of a sudden. And when I think of the snake, I think of well, there's plenty of thoughts I have about snakes, but one of them, of course, is the snake in the Garden of Eden. So it feels like the sudden appearance of the serpent as a representation of the darkness of mankind, and I thought there was great lines throughout, but I especially liked where it says, "Caressing, collapsing killers thrill for men in pain as
Mhm.
fiery faces fall. Then a sea of war must feed fading eyes where war weeps veins." Wonderful lines and very well done. And your thoughts, John?
Yeah, you're right. It does feel a little bit like a stream of consciousness, but you're right. It's um, broken apart into images, and so it gives each image kind of this stream of consciousness that in my comment, I said it gave it a kind of a surreal feel, and so we had a poem last night that was by Diane D. Maybe that just seemed like a slideshow of images, and I get that feeling here too. But the images here are kind of surreal. It is like within each image, it's like the stream of consciousness, as you say. But even it's not like it'd be one thing if it was a stream of consciousness, just from beginning to end with no breaks or whatever. These are broken down, and yet even within each individual piece, it's still stream of. There's nothing necessarily relating them. Some of the stanzas, yes, but like the last stanza, "Bad diamonds crack, sad ribbons drape death's laps, and backsides rip inside clapped flown killers." There's like just three completely independent uh, pieces to that stream of consciousness. There's others like the one you were quoting. It's got it's basically war. The caressing, collapsing killers. Well, yeah, and that with the next section. I mean, I think that's all one stanza, but it's basically pretty much war. So some of them, it's kind of cohesive, the stream of consciousness within them. So to me, it kind of came off with this kind of sequence of images of surreal, let's say, logic. Came off feeling really dreamlike. So I got the sense that this was and also, this is covering everything from like sex to war and pretty much almost everything in between. So that to me, it kind of gave it this mythic scale. And so it feels to me like a dreamscape seen from above, like or seen from far away, and just encompassing this huge collection of images. It's he does have his own. He has a unique style. Jim does, and I like it. The way that he does that stream of consciousness. It's pretty effective, I think, and yeah. So and also, it kind of drills down as he goes on, so that in terms of the um not the darkness, but well, I don't know, kind of the damage, I guess. I mean, the next to the last stanza is simply bad birds, but in the last stanza, it's bad diamonds that are cracking, and diamonds are really hard, and they're not supposed to crack, and there's really it's hard to crack a diamond even if it's bad. So there's to me there's this sense of of growing. I'm not really sure what. It's tension, but it's also, I don't know, breaking. I'm not sure. Um, Yeah, I think this is one that I would have to really sit with a lot longer before it started to really sink in, and but the imagery is really nice. It's fantastic imagery. And
Oh,
comment.
absolutely. Absolutely. Great observations there, John. All right. And what do we have next?
I believe next we have Poetic Debris poem, and I need to paste the link. Oh, come on. Poetic Debris poem is called Falling for a Smiling Sun. And would you like to try that one?
I would be happy to do that. The sun was smiling so showily today as I undressed my window panes. Overwhelmingly, I felt the warm rays of its winks seeping into my pale pores, surfeiting me with the spirit I lack to take the first steps to where it rises. Then your voice pulled me back to the gulf of your haze, eclipsing the flimsy hope that was hardly beginning to blink in the humid horizon of its sight, spinning webs of the same poisonous lies, laced with the last elastic alibis to snare my sobering resolution, futilely sowing anew the putrid promise of last time and never again in my barren heart, as you stroke the septic skin of my affection with rue-furred fingertips, sweating to stifle the scorching burns of soreness. With a mind rashly wallowing in contentment, you press your balsamic lips on my wounded pride, murmuring another syrupy sorry, waiting for the I forgive you smile to spangle in my estranged eyes, deeming that today will be just like yesterday and the day before. Little did you know that today the sun was smiling so showily before you snitched me from its glimmering glances, and it kept smiling wider and wider, shining brighter and brighter, tickling my turned back and itching me to look her way. I bet you'd never I bet you'd have never foretold that today my sorry will swallow yours as I follow the sun shafts to a realm sterilized of you. With no farewells, slamming no doors, I'm going to spread my wings, trying to remember how I used to soar. End poem. And
Mm.
Poetic Debris wrote to prompt one, which is out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and that's from the poem Lady Lazarus by Sylvia Plath.
Mhm.
And your thoughts, John?
Oh yeah, this is extraordinarily Plath-like, and definitely prompt one. The the growing escalation in this with the recurring sun theme that is, you know, just recurs over and over and over again, is absolutely fantastic. That it um, this is a really great example of, you know, like how to build pressure or tension, and escalate it with repetition and recursion. And so the sun is the driving force there. It's uh, I I really liked this poem because of its solid Plath alignment. It was like, this is exactly, you know, the kind of poem I was hoping for prompt one. It's extraordinarily well done. And you know, if uh, if her lover or boyfriend or husband or whatever it is would like her to write a letter of reference for his next girlfriend, I think he should probably back off from that because um, she increasingly she becomes increasingly dissatisfied with him. There's like some just like escalating language that goes along with it as well as so I really like that. But um I think with this escalation and repetition, the volta, the turn is, little did you know that today the sun was smiling so showily, before you snitch me from its glimmering glances. I think that's a really good technique, to have this, this repetition driven by something like the sun, and then really like use the sun as the central component to the turn, and because it helps kind of at that point also change the symbology of the sun, and it permits further recursion or repetition afterwards. So I think this is just extremely well done. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. I have to agree. Wonderful comment there, John. Yeah, I mean this I love how this connects with the prompt and the imagery and metaphors, how there is, like you were saying, a build up. And yet there's a consistency in this right where you can see the inner struggle that the person is going through. How they're so unhappy in this relationship. And it feels in part like the idea of a relationship where the person keeps emotionally hurting them. And like I get that idea, especially with the stanza that says, "With a mind rashly wallowing in contentment, you press your balsamic lips on my wounded pride, murmuring another syrupy sorry, waiting for the I forgive you smile to spangle in my estranged eyes." You know, that idea of that apology, that kiss, that
Mm.
apology that seems so sweet and yet at the same time stings, because you know it's just part of a circular process that's going to happen over and over again. And I like how the ending speaks on the idea of rising, of finding one's own wings, but in a quiet way, like finding the inner strength, finding the ability to soar and get out of the situation that you're in, but in a way that doesn't involve screaming and slamming doors. It is simply quietly and with resolution moving forward. So
Mm.
definitely a strong write by Poetic Debris, and very well done for sure.
Actually, the final stanza is fantastic, but the next to the last stanza, I just loved that line. I bet you'd have never foretold that today my sorry will swallow yours. The idea that one person's sorry can swallow someone else's is just fantastic writing. I love that image, you know?
Yeah, that is true. That is a great line. And
Yeah,
then how it also looks at the idea of, your sorries didn't mean anything. My sorry, it means something. It
yeah,
means I'm leaving and this is the end. This
yeah.
is, so there is a lot of wonderful impact within that line and the symbolism of it.
Yeah,
So,
like, my sorry is bigger than yours, like, my sorry
yes.
drinks your sorry's milkshake.
Oh my gosh. I'll show you
Alright.
my sorry if you show me my yours. All right, John, what do we got next?
Alright, next up is, already loaded and in the room, and it is What the Dark Taught by X-Ray Mike 79, and it goes like this. I lived beside my body like a ghost, who haunts the house but cannot touch the walls, who drifts through every room she loved the most, yet leaves no mark, no warmth along the halls. She said a word that opened like a seam along the fabric of an ordinary day. I heard it, nodded, felt the whole world lean. Some words don't land, they simply come to stay. They stripped me to the marrow and the bone, first hair, than every story I had worn. My skull gleamed back at me, a hollow clone, a face so clean, so raw and freshly born. I was the house after the fire had passed. No taste, no want, no rage, no reach, misread. 4 walls of char, a roof that couldn't last, the skeleton of something that had fled. Then something small, the copper taste of broth, then light that didn't press against the eye. I was a wing unfurling from the moth, not butterfly, not yet, but watch me try. It came back red, insubordinate, a crown, not auburn, not the color grief would know. The body, having burned itself half down, decided it would make the embers glow. So this is what I owe the dark, my life. I thank it for the veiled self, its first breath. I hold this gratitude just like a knife and cannot tell which edge is life, which death. I walk now like I mean it. I've arrived. I taste the rain. I feel the cold. I'm here. The sickness taught me how to be alive, and I am more afraid than I appear. End poem. Whew.
Great read there, John. This is a wonderful dark right by X-Ray Mike 79. And I see he won a golden, is it a gold or a bronze?
A gold, yeah.
Gold, wonderful. Well deserved for sure. This has great rhyme and flow, wonderful consistency and tone, amazing imagery and metaphors. I like how it speaks on the idea of despair and depression and the darkness within, and using a haunted house or a house, the house as a representation of the body, and the burning down of the house, as a representation of the destruction of the spirit, as one is carrying that heavy burden of sorrow and depression. But I also like how it pays tribute to those dark times in life, whether there's things going on around you, or the darkness is something you're struggling with on the inside. There's this sense of you became who you are today because the darkness gave you that opportunity to form into something new. And that does especially come across into that second to last stanza. So this is what I owe the dark, my life. I thank it for the veiled self, its first breath. I hold the gratitude just like a knife, and cannot tell which edge is life, which is death. And strong lines there. I also really like where it says, I was the house after the fire had passed. No taste, no want, no rage, no reach, misread. 4 walls of char, a roof that couldn't last, the skeleton of something that had fled. That seems to me like feeling like used and destroyed by people's carelessness over and over again, until you can know you're left searching for your identity, trying to figure out, once you get past the destruction of self caused by other people, who are you truly? I mean, this is just an amazing write by X-Ray Mike 79, and very well done.
Yeah, this was the cancer biologist deep inside of me, and the author of a whole bunch of tumor poems, really liked this poem. There's so much goodness here, and so much Plath-like goodness. This was definitely prompt 1, but it also had, I think it was prompt 6, had like resurrection or rebirth, something along those lines. And this also had that because the ending, where he says, I walk now like I mean it. I've arrived. I taste the rain. I feel the cold. I'm here. The sickness taught me how to be alive. And yet the last line, and I am more afraid than I appear, kind of there's sort of this rebirth, but it's with a caveat that, with that rebirth comes this fear. The first line of the second stanza, she said a word that opened like a seam, is just like throws this word out there and never actually says it after that. But so, that just builds pressure in like one line. It introduces a word that is never actually later revealed. And so you spend the whole poem thinking, well, what is the word? But then, it's immediately followed by, they stripped me to the marrow and the bone, first hair, then every story I had worn. And it goes on, with things like hair loss and well, the hair loss there, but then there's sort of a loss of identity. This was clearly a diagnosis, and it was one that kind of changed the way the speaker thinks of themselves. And the bone, the stripped to the marrow and the bone, first hair, then every story I had worn, I think is, maybe bone cancer, something along those lines. The marrow and the bone might kind of point toward bone cancer, and then, the hair loss. So I think the word, which she never, or the narrator never actually says, I think is cancer. And then the burned out house. I was the house after the fire had passed. I think is really strong. And there's this sense of ghost that kind of comes in, and it reminded me, long ago I was a firefighter, and people would occasionally donate their house that they wanted to get rid of to us to practice on. And there was this one house that we went to, and it was kind of really stripped down, like kids had torn it apart, and the owner wanted to get rid of it and put something new in. And so when we got there to kind of inspect it beforehand, it just felt like so haunted, because all the windows were broken in and the door was kicked in. It's just this dilapidated house, but it just kind of felt haunted to me. And then we burned it, and like as it was burning this image just kind of reminded me of that, and of how cancer kind of hollows us out, because it grows within us, and kills off and pushes away the normal healthy cells in order for it to grow, and it grows like a fire does. So I think that the imagery here is fantastic, and it just keeps building and building and building the pressure. So I thought this was an incredibly strong write, and what I said in my comments is, this poem has everything. But what doesn't this poem have? A gold medal. I mean, I knew it as soon as I read it that this was a superstar. And so I'm a huge fan of this poem. So thank you, X-Ray Mike 79. Fantastic write.
Oh, absolutely. Great comment, John. All right. And what do we got next?
All right. Next, I guess, is your opportunity to read Moss and Memory's poem, Tenacious Membrane.
All right. I would be happy to do that. A feather wafting through morning quiet, arriving, drifting, floating, then hovering on the day, imposing until it presses breath. I exhale, it drifts, allowing space, a thin reprieve, not gone, hovering around me, dim cloud against my skin, against my ribs, expanding, then distracted, by what the day requires, small things accumulating with a slow insistence, no space, pressure beneath a settled surface, hovering through the hours, unable to release, filling the quiet places with what refuses light, drawing inward, hardening to density with no exit, held within a tenacious membrane, imposing until it steals breath and poem.
Mm,
And let's see, so Mawson Memory wrote to prompt 6, I am inhabited by a cry. And that was from the poem Elm by Sylvia Plath. And John, your thoughts?
yeah. So with each of these prompts, there's kind of a suggestion of, like what you might explore with it. And um, the prompts are ordered. The first three are maybe a little bit less challenging, a little bit, gives you a little bit more freedom. Prompt 6, though, is kind of the high end. And so this, the add-on here was right from an internal state that is held in check. Classic Plath-like move. And then you might explore how pressure is contained rather than released. How control, restraint, or stillness shape the voice so that what is withheld carries as much weight as what is said. Um, and prompt 6 is all in my 6 prompts. Prompt 6 is always the hardest and kind of advanced, like the advanced exercise, I guess. And Mawson Memory nailed prompt 6, and I mean it's a challenging prompt. There's pressure throughout. It never drains, and the pressure is kind of thrown in there in the beginning. There's this feather wafting through the morning quiet, arriving, drifting, floating, then hovering on the day, and it's never really explained what the feather represents. And then the second stanza is my favorite. I exhale, it drifts, allowing space, a thin reprieve. So there's this sense of breathing it out, but it's only a thin reprieve because, like it immediately fills back up. It's not gone. It's hovering around me, dim cloud against my skin. So this is, this could be a lot of things, I guess. It's never revealed. I mean, part of me thinks maybe it's anxiety, because it reminds me of my own anxiety. But it really could also just be it could be anxiety on steroids, like a panic attack or something like that. It could be I don't know, just existential dread. So it could be a lot of these things. But in the end, it actually doesn't matter because what the poem is about is just the containment of this thing, whatever it is. It's just some internal pressure beneath the settled surface, and and it's just held all the way through. There's literally not a single line of pressure relief, and that was what the whole prompt was after. So I thought this was incredible alignment with prompt 6, and uh, we did give it the silver medal, and I think it was extraordinarily well earned because prompt 6 was hard, and Mawson Memory just kind of nailed it. And I also like the tenacious membrane. There's this membrane that's holding everything in, and it's tenacious as hell, and that's borne out in the poem. The pressure is just tenaciously held within. So I love this poem too. I thought this was just like the other poem in the contest that made me so happy that I ran it. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to say this is a great comment there, John. This is definitely a well-deserved silver. I do like how the exhale represents that release of getting a little bit of that pressure out, and yet there's so much that is held back. Amazing imagery and metaphors, really thoughtful and captivating lines. This speaks to me on having to face a buildup of tension, having to face what's going on not only around you but inside as well, and the reality that it's all being like the reality that you're being held together by something that is strong and yet fragile at the same time. And I really like that ending, but I also really like where it says, not gone, hovering around me, dim cloud against my skin, against my ribs expanding, then distracted by what the day requires, small things accumulating with a slow insistence, no space. That I can really relate to that idea of distracted by what the day requires. And I think many people can, in that idea that you have these thoughts like, this is something I have to get done. This is something I have to focus on to help myself. And then all of a sudden you find yourself at the end of the day realizing that you pushed that aside to take care of all these little things. And sometimes we, I think, use those little things as distractions to not have to face what is stealing our breath, taking away our ability to, I don't know, like a kind of a healing of the spirit. But I think this is just an amazing write by Moss and Memory, and very well done. And just a really great contest that you ran, John. Oh my goodness gracious, so many wonderful responses to it, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like we have some really strong pressure poets in LNP, and I think they were really drawn to the Plath contest. I mean, Plath was just such a master at it, and this brought out, I think, just the seriously good pressure poetry that so many of our members are really good at. It really made me happy because pressure poetry is just my favorite thing. And yeah, this is another great example. And I'm what is it about Plath that brings all of the pressure poets to the yard? It's just her insane ability to do it so well. I mean, anybody that reads Plath is just going to immediately identify it. It's just everywhere in her poetry. She was my second
Absolutely.
favorite pressure poet after Richard Sykin. So well, and Sykin does it differently. She is a real pressure poet. Sykin's builds pressure and then he just kind of obsesses and so forth. But and the obsession becomes the pressure. But she was just a pure at just every line was pressure. And Moss and Memory nailed it, and so did X-Ray Mike. Just brilliant. So I'm so glad I ran the Plath contest, and I'm so glad you were so supportive of it, Pam.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I love sharing poetry, and especially poetry, like that's why I mean I enjoy all the shows, but I enjoyed the conversations that come from In Our Craft or Sullen Art, because we are looking at poets inspired by, literature throughout history. And I think that, and it's interesting to see the different styles and who people are drawn to. And Plath is definitely one that people are really drawn to. And I do think it is, as you were saying, that pressure building up, but also the emotional impact. Like
Yeah.
I think, the struggles that she expresses, the personal sorrows and that she expresses in her poetry are something that people can really relate to, you
Mm,
know.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, all of the poems had that really solid emotional component to them, including the last two. I didn't really talk about it. I don't think you did that much as well, but very hard hitting. The idea of a disease, for example, being contained inside or growing inside and then surviving has real heavy emotional impact. It's such a strong contest. I'd love for this contest.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have to agree. I have to agree.
And now
Um,
we're on to yours, right? Eleanor Wiley?
Yes, yes. So before we go into the poetry, let's see. Here, I want to share information about Eleanor Wiley. So she was born Eleanor Morton Hoyt in Somerville, New Jersey. She did die at the young age of 43. She was born September 7th, 1885, and died December 16th, 1928, at New York City, New York. She um, she was a poet and a novelist. She grew up in a very socially affluent family. She was expected to basically, she was trained for the life of a debutante and a
Mm,
society wife, but she did end up rebelling against that. She became notorious in her lifetime for her multiple marriages and affairs. Um, she described she actually suffered from high blood pressure her whole life, which is actually what led to her death. And let's see what else. So she was very rebellious. I did read before, I can't remember, I'm kind of slightly paraphrasing, I can't find it exactly, but I did read before that she was at times criticized for what people saw as her overly simplified verse, rhyming verse. But then, many came to realize that there actually was this complexity within her poetry. Her first one of her most popular poems is Velvet Shoes. Um,
mm,
and let's see what else. Okay, so her one of her most well-known and popular, it was actually her first volume of poetry, is Nets to Catch the Wind. I personally have only read her poetry online. I have not read any of her poetry anthologies. She actually was poets that were attracted to her, later poets that were attracted to her style and inspired by her, included Edna St. Vincent Millay and Louis Untermeyer. I actually don't know the poetry of Louis Untermeyer, but I am a huge fan of Edna St. Vincent Millay. Um, she struggled with a lot of issues because of things that she'd gone through in her life. She almost all I think she always wrote in rhyme. Her lines tend to be very short. She had a style. She had a style that basically was, to me, it just feels like there is no extra words that aren't needed. It's just that it says what it needs to say and doesn't drag it out. There is a kind of, to me, uh, there she does. You can see religious influence within some of her verse. You can also see the influence, like, of her life, and the world that she lived in, and the expectations of women, and the fears that she dealt with. Um,
mm.
and so I highly recommend anybody who has not read Eleanor Wiley, um, take time to do that. Take time to read about her. Take time to read her poetry, and what she has to say through her poetry. The contest did not get like a huge response. It got 11 entries, plus we got an extra one. Um, but it was quality. Like, I really appreciated and enjoyed the way that people were inspired by her poetry. And I don't know if you've read her, John, or if you have any thoughts that you would like to share.
Well, so I've read some of her, but I never I still haven't delved in deep to her poetry. But she was from a very well-to-do family, and I saw one description of her described her as aristocratic, and
Yep.
and so you're right. She had that whole, like debutante, the almost like the these days, what would be the word? You know, maybe um, oh, what's the word? Anyway, so um, a social people knew her. She was known as a society person. And so the poetry sometimes took us like a back seat to this public persona that she had, and it probably detracted some from her poetry, but she was a big deal in poetry in like the 1920s, before she died. And the poem that you're going to read is a really good poem, but it's a little different from some of the other poems that I read of hers. That in the way that she in the turn, and so I think this is a really interesting piece that you're going to read, and so I'm looking forward to hearing you read it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, John, and great thoughts shared there, information shared. All right. So, what do we have up next?
So I've posted the link. This is your read of her piece called "Address to My Soul."
My soul, be not disturbed by planetary war. Remain securely orbed in this contracted star. Fear not, pathetic flame, your sustenance's doubt, glassed in translucent dream, they cannot stuff you out. Wear water or a mask of unapparent cloud. Be brave and never ask a more defunctive shroud. The universal points are shrunk into a flower. Between indelicate joints, chaos keeps no power. The pure integral form, austere and silver dark, is balanced on the storm in its predestined arc. Small as a sphere of rain, it slides along the groove, whose path is furrowed plain among the suns that move. The shapes of April buds outlive the phantom year. Upon the void at odds, the dewdrop falls severe. Five-petaled flame, be cold, be firm, dissolving star, accept the stricter mold that makes you singular. End poem. And yeah, this was one of the prompts offered up in the contest. And although it was not the most written to prompt, it was a poem that I felt really needed to be shared. And your thoughts on this classic poem, John?
Oh, Pam, yeah, this is so good. Um, there's all sorts of goodness here. So this was probably written maybe shortly after World War One, and so it starts off. My soul, do not be not disturbed, or maybe it was written during World War One, but you know, my soul, be not disturbed by planetary war. So world war, and then it immediately turns to sort of this kind of like a nice object, remain securely orbed in this contracted star. And she does this repeatedly, sort of replacing these bad things. Somewhere, the universal points are shrunk into a flower. Between indelicate joints, chaos keeps no power. So she does it again there, where she, she's like observing chaos and then replacing it with this shrunken, delicate flower. And so I think she does this really, really well through the whole poem. She just takes these things like war and chaos. Somewhere there's a storm, maybe further down, and replaces them by warm fuzzies. I would say things that are maybe less dangerous, and I really like that about this. But also there's this weird juxtaposition. Five-petaled flame, be cold. And so there's also a bit of like a firm dissolving star. So there's all of these juxtapositions. As I mean, it's similar with these juxtapositions where you've got two different pieces. So you've got like a flame, but then it's cold, and you've got this star, but it's firm and dissolving. And so I really like how she does that. But the end, she would often use more startling kind of turns. There's no turn here except for the last stanza, and so it's not so much a turn as it is what I would call a tightening. And so there's sort of hope throughout this whole thing of being able to overlook, the chaos and the war and so forth. And then the final stanza just kind of tightens it down, and it says, accept the stricter mold that makes you singular. And so I love that ending. But it's fairly different from much of her other work that I read. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree. I do appreciate her use of rhyme, and how with the I do appreciate how with the first and closing stanza that she goes with the near rhyme or slant rhyme, instead of exact. But wonderful imagery. I like that this, giving, as you were saying, the time period that it was written in, with all the chaos of the war going on, and the inner struggles she was having. It does offer up those words of comfort and hope to a soul that is struggling with all this doubt, all this negative energy flowing through it. And there's just these beautiful lines throughout. I think this is just a fine example of a poem. Sorry, I'll find the right word. Like,
Yep.
if people haven't read Eleanor Wiley, this and Velvet Shoes are definitely a couple of fine offerings that should be read. So, absolutely, absolutely. All right.
Yeah,
And
a lot of Americans, we tend to forget about World War One. But I mean, it was a massive world calamity, and I mean, we focus more on World War II, but World War One
yep,
at the time was the first World War, and seemed like suddenly, these smaller regional wars were being replaced by a world war. And people forget the U.S. sent 5 million troops to World War One, and this was in like the late 19 teens, when the U.S. population was much smaller than it is now. 5 million troops was a massive commitment to a war that was on the other side of in Europe, basically, but included much more than just Europe. It was a big deal, and I think sort of that aristocratic class was affected by it heavily, and so it had a big impact on people. And the Roaring '20s was kind of a response to that as well. People were so glad it was over, and that people kind of just let loose. So people underestimate what a big impact World War One had on everywhere in the world. But particularly in the US. As I said, we sent 5 million troops. So it was a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. That is a really great observations and so true. I think you're right. And understandably that World War II is so much focused on, but so much came out of that time period of World War One, and the way it impacted people. I mean, we even have poets that are like, the World War One poets. They served in the military at that time. Their poetry was, inspired by so much of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of poets that came out of World War. Wilfred Owen is one of my favorites, and he was a soldier in World War One that wrote incredible poetry about it, but wrote about the horrors of it. At the time they called it the war to end all wars, and like LOL. I mean, like 20 years later, here we are in World War II. So, I mean, people were ecstatic when it ended, and they felt like, oh, that was it. We're never going to do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it didn't quite work out that way.
no. All right. So I've posted the link to the first contest poem, and I will take it. It is called Miss Rhymney by Peter Solway. At least I hope that's how you pronounce it, Peter. Reach out to me if I messed that up. But this is Miss Rhymney by Peter Solway. The measured craft of same sounds to echo thoughts profound. Snuff out a Shakespearean sonnet. Once an obedient couplet. Free verse for hair-turbaned her from now on. But try as she might, take illicit substances all night. Translate Rimbaud from the French, high priest of getting out of it. Extreme derangement, rhyming couplets to return with a vengeance. End poem.
Great read, John. Yeah, I like the how he played with the word rhyme and her name, like, spelled it in such a way that it was a physical representation and play on word of her name.
Yep.
Yep.
Is that
This
what it is?
definitely. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that what it is, Miss Rhyme? What were you
I
saying?
think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Like, but instead of spelling rhyme RHY, ME, I feel like he twisted around with RYH because of the way her name is spelled. And it could be rhymey. I mean, I think either one works. But this feels more like a snapshot of her life and her struggles rather than being focused on a particular prompt. I feel like this speaks on the rebellion that came with her poetry, that she wasn't happy to do, like she did have she did stick with her rhyme. She did tend to have stanzas that were really followed a pattern for the most part, and yet at the same time, because there wasn't the same kind of strict rules in her rhyme as one would find in a form such as a Shakespearean sonnet. There was this sense of rebellion. It also feels like the idea, like his end lines to me: extreme derangement, rhyming couplets to return with a vengeance. Is first of all to me the idea of taking things too far. The idea that, yeah, it's great, to be rebellious, but when the rebellion destroys you, like, cutting off your cutting off your nose to spite your face, or
Right.
something like that. And then rhyming couplets to return with a vengeance makes me think of the idea of poetry like fashion, keeps changing. Like what was once out of style comes back into, or what's out of style comes back into style. And so now we're all saying this is what good poetry is, which is why, I take when people, like, to me, obviously there are certain things that you have to look at when with poetry that makes it poetry, but it's my opinion. And it's interesting to see, when it's like, okay, this is good poetry because of this form and this form, and it's like, and then you look at how, just like in fashion, just like in any form of entertainment and art, there's always this turning to the next chapter, to what are we moving forward to, or what are we going back to. And that's what Peter's poem makes me think of. And you did a wonderful read of that, John. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Peter's poems are always quite a bit of fun to read. I think you pretty much nailed it. This is about poetic form and trying to get away from it, and then really tries to get away with it in the second half of the third stanza that translate Rimbaud from the French. Rimbaud was wild, and the high priest of getting out of it, I think, refers to sort of like Rimbaud's derangement, and then in the next line, it sort of reinforces that by saying extreme derangement, derangement is exactly how I would describe Rimbaud's poetry, just crazy. And so, like the poetic form is just dissolving, like stanza by stanza or couplet by couplet, until it devolves down into Rimbaud and this just crazy, wild, deranged poetry. And then after that, after everything just dissolves, then you get, well, we're going to return to rhyming couplets with a vengeance. But I also wonder if this, I'm wondering here if Peter is also kind of capturing, as I was saying, the World War I, where, the whole world, dissolved from normal form down into the extreme derangement of World War I. And the use of Rimbaud, who was French, which is, where a large part of the World War I fighting took place, and where it was probably the most deranged. I can't help but think that Peter has crafted this kind of next level description of the world around World War I. I should reach out to him and ask him if that is right, but because then after World War I, there was this kind of return with a vengeance. In the Roaring '20s, is return with a vengeance to normal life. The rhyming couplets returned. I cannot help but think that's sort of the next layer underneath this. So I choose to think that that's the case, and because of it, I really like the poem, because it's got that, to me, that next layer.
I like that. I like that. Great observations. And if you happen to ask him and he responds, let me know what he says, because I'm very curious.
Well, Peter, I hope you're listening to the podcast and you'll reach out to me, because I'm dying to know.
There you go. There you go.
All right. All right. Good. So we've got the genders correct on the poems. Up next is, let me post the link. I forgot to post the link. Up next is Weaver of Dreams' poem, Winter Wild. And that's to you, Pam.
All right. Well, Weaver was actually nice enough to supply us with a SoundCloud.
I should have thought of that. She does that pretty much always.
She does. She does. And so I'm going to go ahead and go grab that. and give it a play. So, all right.
Winter's shroud, so cold and bleak, was a cloak of white upon the land. Now the thaw begins to speak of life restored by nature's hand. From an icy slumber dawn arises, as buds burst forth with vibrant hue. A symphony of colour claims the skies, and verdant fields come into view. Once barren, branches now entwined with blossom kisses, soft and sweet. Their petals breathe a scent refined, to leave behind wild winter's sleet.
Wonderful read and write there, Weaver. Thank you for the SoundCloud. It is very much appreciated. And just a reminder, everyone, if you're unable to call in, the next best thing is to make a recording of your poem, because then we get to hear your poetry in your voice, or how you would um, like it to be heard. And she wrote to prompt number 2, which was velvet shoes. And John, your thoughts?
Well, I would say that this poem, it doesn't have any shoes in it, but boy, it sure feels velvety, doesn't it? So
Oh,
just
absolutely.
yeah, it's just got that really soft kind of a feel of winter turning to spring. And it's beautifully written. Weaver's writing is just so gorgeous. So it starts out with, winter's shroud so cold and bleak was a cloak of white upon the land. You already just have that velvety soft feeling of snow, and the cloak gives it that soft cloak-like feeling. So it really incorporates the velvety. I don't think I saw any shoes, but the velvet shoes are, soft as well. So I think this is, kind of capturing that softness. And this is a real clear turn from an icy slumber. Dawn arises as buds burst forth with vibrant hue. So the first two stanzas are sort of, like winter, and then along comes spring, and the buds burst forth. So there's a lot of sense of cold and silver, cold, snow colors. So it's got a few um, pieces, I would say, of some of the symbols and things that Wiley wrote about, but I'm not sure how much else in here it relates directly to Wiley herself, because I'm not that versed in her. But in terms of the velvet shoes, this just has so much softness, and I really love now the thaw begins to speak. It's like nature, or nature has its own voice, and it begins to speak. So before that, it was sort of silent, but now it actually has, a sense of agency, I guess is the word I would use. So now it can speak, and so I think that one line is just my favorite line in the whole poem. Your thoughts, Pam?
Yeah, wonderful comment there, John. Well, I have to say, for me, when I run a contest with poems that offered up for inspiration, I do tend to tell people that they can be inspired by any part,
Yeah.
or the general vibe. Now there is a repetition of the mention of snow within the velvet shoes. Like the first line is "Let us walk in the white snow," and then the last two lines are "On white silence below, we shall walk in the white snow." So I do think that the that I feel like um, Weaver did a good job of focusing on that imagery as both, you know, being taken literally and metaphorically in the I do feel like for me the imagery within Weaver's poem is absolutely beautiful in her choice of written couplets. And I do, it does amuse me that the end of Peter's poem was, you know, couplets coming back with a vengeance. And then we have Weaver's poem, which is written in couplets.
Oh,
Um,
nice catch.
Yes,
I didn't
I
catch
was
that.
very
That's
amused
great.
by that. But yeah, I do see this. While I do think it can be taken metaphorically, I feel like this really focuses on simply appreciating the beauty of winter, appreciating that it is a time of quietness.
Mm,
Which now that I'm talking, sometimes I talk out loud and I start thinking as I'm talking, and
mhm,
which I think also could be taken metaphorically in the idea that winter represents a time in our own lives where we need to say, okay, things are quiet right now. We don't need to go out looking for noise and chaos. We need to appreciate what we have in this moment, a time to find, you know, some peace, a time to find some rest.
mm,
And I thought there were great lines throughout, but I especially like once barren branches now entwined with blossom kisses soft and sweet.
mm,
That actually makes me think of the idea of somebody finding love when there was a sense of never having any hope of finding love.
mm.
So excellent write by Weaver of Dreams, and very well done.
So
Ah,
two morals. Well, one moral of the story and one comment. I didn't read the prompt carefully enough. So now that you mention it, yes, it's obvious how it relates to the prompt. I think. Um,
yes.
yeah, I like your comment about the quiet of winter. When it snows here in Connecticut, you know, people stop driving, they stay home, and even if you live in a city with a lot of normal noise, when the snow falls, you step outside, it's deadly quiet because everybody is at home and there's nothing to hear except for the snowfall. And I think she captures that really, really well. The other thing I would say is that Weaver could rewrite the phone book, and I would read it. I mean, she's just such a beautiful writer. I mean, seriously, Weaver, if you ever want to rewrite the phone book, I'll buy your book of poetry. So
There you go. There you go. You know, if Weaver rewrote the phone book, everybody would be like sexy vampires and yep.
all right. So, since the next poem is Captain Kerr, I think I'll read that because after that is Way
Well,
Down Upon Joy.
after that, we actually well, Captain Kerr actually has a SoundCloud, so just so you know.
Okay. Well, then go
Yeah,
for it.
I always put the word SoundCloud or recording right above the
I didn't.
poem.
I will look for that from now on. I looked to the end, to the end of it to see who the author is, right? So I'm looking all the way to the right, and I need to start reading the white text above it to the left. All right, so I've posted the link.
All right, and I'll go grab that SoundCloud. Doo-doo. Oops. All right, here we go.
I find true poise in frozen Sullen architecture and yellow skirts of sulfur springs and scrolls of dark rebellious lore. My works are built of sharpened flint, the glacial fire that I host, where suns refuse to leave a print upon my ice-encrusted coast. Inside my mirror's arctic glare, the wavy resin flows below. If just one heartbreak I can bear, let me burn in silvered snow. Grasps the granite ribs of Maine to steal myself, while gold-tipped sands light desert mountains of Champlain. I splinter into shards of brittle sharp diamond dust, white heat beneath his touch, a fierce and glacial fire of frost and cold desire, brittle sharp beneath his touch. Inside my mirror's arctic glare, the wavy resin flows below. If just one heartbreak I can bear, let me burn in silvered snow. A shipwreck lies with broken mast beneath the cold Atlantic Sea. Beneath the cold Atlantic Sea, the frozen specters of my past are churned with salt and ivory. Churned with salt and ivory. The broken mast, frozen specter, let me burn. Salt and ivory. Glacial fire, glacial
Wonderful, right here, Captain Kerr, and a great choice of music to put with your words. Thank you for the SoundCloud. It is very much appreciated. Now, Captain Kerr actually went and grabbed one of her poems for inspiration that was not offered in the contest, which of course was absolutely fine, because I do usually tell people, always tell people, that they can go and grab, something not offered in the contest as long as it's from that particular poet or artist. And he was inspired by verse 4 of Eleanor Wiley's poem, Wild Peaches. And John, your thoughts?
Where do you see that? Oh.
In his AN.
I didn't read far enough down. Oh.
There, yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Nice. So the title alone is definitely Wiley. Glacial fire, that juxtaposition of cold and hot. But I think it also points toward like the somewhere down below second or third stanza, something about where did it go? Frozen. Was it frozen? winter's sullen architecture. So I think that glacial fire, the glacial part is like that winter architecture in the first stanza. But I think fire here is really also relating to passion, which or some amount of passion, because the poem is really very emotionally contained, which is also wily. So I was looking in the AN because, well, okay, first of all, the first couplet is absolutely fantastic, and definitely strikes me as being, you know, similar to what I've read about Wiley. I find true poise in frozen things in winter's sullen architecture. So you immediately get that, especially with the glacial in the title, you immediately get like an iceberg, kind of a winter ice architecture, the sort of the infrastructure, the emotional infrastructure, and then the whole poem then tries to kind of contain the emotion. I was looking in the AN because the third stanza has a whole bunch of geographic references that didn't make as much sense. Makes a little bit more sense maybe now that I've read the that fourth stanza from Listen to Glacial Fire, because that's got at least down to the Puritan marrow of my bones. So that kind of brings in like New England. And at first I was thinking that Maine was referring to Acadia National Park, which is, you know, just a huge range. And so I was thinking that it might be referring to that for its granite and hardness, and maybe it is. But the Puritan in the prompt kind of at least geolocates the prompt to maybe New England, you know, home of Puritan America back in the early days. So I really like that. I will stop talking in a moment after I inside my mirror's Arctic glare. So there's the ice again. The wavy resin flows below. The wavy resin, so resin like coming out of, you know, sap coming out of a tree maybe. So maybe the emotion leaking out. And if just one heartbreak I can bear, let it be lined with silvered snow. So so it's I think he's basically saying that, you know, that, well, that I think is the turn, but it's also basically saying, you know, if I can bear one heartbreak, at least let it be contained. And I like that couplet. So your thoughts?
Well, great observations there, John. Yeah, I really liked the rhyme and flow of this. I like the first person narrative. I think it connects really well with the chosen prompt, plus pays tribute not only to oh, sorry, I'm blanking out on names, and I ran the contest, Eleanor Wiley and her life, but really the struggles of being a woman in society at that time. You know, the expectations when you were a socialite, the expectations of being from an affluent family and having to hold back so much of your emotions, you know, having to have that poise and yet wanting to be part of, as he's, you know, that first stanza I think really brings that out. I find true poise in frozen things in winter's sullen architecture, in yellow skirts of sulfur springs and scrolls of dark rebellious lure. You know, here's this idea of this woman who is expected to be all poised and be basically emotionally frozen, and yet she reads about these stories, this lore of rebellion, and she wants to be part of that. I also like how He uses the shipwreck as, to me, a metaphor for a society falling apart. And also the individual. It can represent both the individual and the society. A shipwreck lies with broken mast beneath the cold Atlantic Sea. The frozen specters of my past are churned with salt and ivory. Wonderful lines and just beautifully written by Captain Kerr.
Uh,
And all right, what do
you
we
know,
got next, John? Oh,
Pam, neither one of us commented on the music, and I just wanted to say I thought the music was just fantastic. It picked up, the sound of the times, I think, really, really well. So I thought the music was fantastic as well.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I will say that when Captain Kerr uses Suno, and you have to choose
Hmm.
what music you're going to put with your lyrics, he really does, like, you can tell he puts thought into it. He just doesn't just click little buttons and not think about it. He always seems, to me anyways, to choose music that fits with the prompts, with the time period. Like the last one I listened to of his on a show, it was an Irish artist, and so
Mm,
the music had a real Celtic feel. And
mm,
here, it fits with the kind of 1920s time period. So
yeah.
yeah, absolutely, I'm glad you brought that up, John.
And yeah, you're right. That poise is that aristocratic kind of expectation of daughters, or of especially of daughters, that to have poise, that the debutante balls where they're very kind of formal and poised. So I thought that was a really nice keen observation there on that first stanza, Pam.
Thank you.
Next up, I want you to read this because it is Way Down Upon Joyce's piece, Hope Beyond Hope, Gloss Form by Eleanor Wiley, or Gloss Form.
All right. I would be happy to do that. Let me just get back to where I need to be. And
Here, Pam, you need to be here.
here. Oh no, I'm having an existential crisis. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. All right. Hope Beyond Hope. Gloss form, Eleanor Wiley by Way Down Upon Joy. Hope beyond hope. Now let no charitable hope stir independence I may feel. It seems my soul sails solar space neath starry skies and moonbeams real. And not the false some folks embrace. Now let no charitable hope or confuse my mind with images of rockets resting on the moon, or life beyond your well spoiled earth. And I will be the first to groom imagination's thoughts of worth, or confuse my mind with images of eagles and of antelope, abused by time and man's disgrace, and seeking simple solitude, who too now share this thoughtless place where hope is hapless attitude of eagle and of antelope. I am by nature none of these, and sense in sight as light of pure. Let man shift sands with hope and prayer, and let the least of these secure whatever they need to stem despair. I am by nature none of these. End poem. And she was inspired by Now Let No Charitable Hope by Eleanor Wiley. And the gloss form, for those that don't know, is you take four lines from a classic poet, or you can be a poet, as long as you probably should let them know, or make sure it's okay with them. But you take four lines from their poem. Most of the time it's the first four lines, and then each line is the first line in your stanza. So a gloss form will usually, for the most part, be 4 stanzas long. And the lines that she was inspired by Eleanor Wiley from that poem was, "Now let no charitable hope confuse my mind with images of eagle and of antelope. I am by nature none of these." And John, your thoughts?
Yeah. So when I read the title and I was, prompting you for the read, I was like, oh, this is a gloss form. And so then I was like busy looking in the author's note to find the poem and pull it up. So and read it. So yeah, it's the first stanza from Let No Charitable Hope, which I think is also a really great title, by the way. Let No Charitable Hope. So yeah, the first line of each stanza here comes from Eleanor Wiley's poem. And I think with the gloss form, if I remember, you're supposed to kind of not just take it and run with it, but you're supposed to kind of maybe loop back so that you have to kind of take it and run with it, but you also have to loop back because you need to connect it to the first line of the next stanza. So there's a little bit of play there in like the middle couplet. But you're constrained on the ending of each stanza because you have to connect into the next one to some extent, and you also have to come up with a viable poem after all. So it's an interesting constrained poetic form. And so I think I'm just going to focus on one stanza, or confuse my mind with images, the third stanza, or confuse my mind with images of rockets resting on the moon, of life beyond your well-spoiled earth, and I will be the first to groom imagination's thought of worth, or confuse my mind with images. So it loops back on the end, the last line being the first line, and it's got a really nice kind of a little story inside of it. The rockets and the moon, and then I will be the first to groom imagination's thoughts of worth. So the idea of confusing oneself of these things, of these big things, I guess, and of a life beyond your current earth, that is, like a life beyond maybe your current life, and but then I will be the first to groom imagination's thoughts of worth, or confuse my mind with images. So I think that's a really nice well, it's nicely written, but the imagery of the rocket and the moon, or the metaphor of the rocket and the moon, being, to me, kind of a much bigger life than you currently have. But then you have to kind of she has to come back to confusing her mind with images. So the idea that maybe imagining a bigger life than you currently have might actually end up being a little confusing once your imagination runs wild with your thoughts of worth. So the idea of that you might imagine something bigger, but then kind of you let your imagination take over and end up just confusing you again, I thought was a really strong piece. That's how I interpreted that stanza anyway.
I like that.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is wonderful. It is beautifully written, gloss form. It has a nice flow. There is, as you were saying, that connection, a great consistency in tone, a connection between the opening and the closing. I like how this, speaks on the idea that, yes, especially when you're a poet or an artist, imagination is a beautiful thing to have. It's so much of what and who we are, but at the same time, don't use imagination to escape from the reality of life. I also like how in this poem there's this idea that in not facing the reality, we tend to shrug off those things that are important, like the how mankind is destroying the world and the nature around them. And I think that especially comes through in that third stanza of eagle and of antelope, abused by time and man's disgrace, and seeking simple solitude, who too now share this thoughtless place where hope is hapless attitude of eagle and of antelope. Just amazing, amazing lines, wonderful imagery and metaphor. And I do like how this does, to me, speak on the idea that we need to have hope, and yet at the same time, not allow that hope to have us not facing the reality. Because honest to goodness, things don't get better until we realize how bad things actually are and start doing something about it. So wonderful write by Way Down Upon Joy, and very well done.
Yeah, that was a nice I like the title of the original that it was based on, that, you know, let no charitable hope. Like hope is somehow charitable. So it's just that it was a strong title to the poem that it was based upon. But then a really nice kind of a job thinking about that. Next up is, I guess it's my read.
Well, actually, since it's already 11:02 and I have a second show for the night at 11:30, I would actually like us to.
Sorry, I wasn't watching the clock.
That's okay. I mean, because technically we could do one more, except for I just would like a little breathing space.
Yeah. You go breathe. So we are leaving off with Eric Svensson's "A Stitch in Time" for from there on down to next time.
Yes, we do have carryovers for our next show, and that will be Eric Svensson, Betty Page, Pixie Sticks, and Kathy Cross, and Jody Melton. Yes, so great show tonight, John. Thank you as always for being such an amazing co-host. Thank you to Fill My Eyes for all she does. Thank you to Robbie, Tim, Monarch Soul, Monty G, and anybody else who Yumpy and everybody else who hung on the board, or thank you to Fill My Eyes for all she does. Thank you to everybody who wrote for the show, is listening now, or will be listening later. We truly appreciate you all. In less than a half hour, you can join myself and Intimitus Rex for Echoes in the Dark, where we'll be doing the last of the Echoes contest carryovers, and then going into a couple of other contests, including the topic of goblins. So that should be fun. Make sure to keep an eye out on the contests and topic boards put up by our late night poets, hosts and hostesses, because you're sure to find something to inspire. I just have a wonderful night, John, and have a wonderful night, everyone.
You too, Pam.